This House will come back to order. House will come back to order. The House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, you want to ring the bell? All right, the House will come back to order. We're back on the rules calendar. Back on the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 848.
House Bill 848 by Representative Blackman in the 146th. To be entitled an act to amend Article 4, Chapter 5 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to disposition of surplus property so as to change certain definitions to provide the Department of Administrative Services additional options. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Blackman to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fellow members, bring before you House Bill 848. As requested by the department, it would allow surplus property to be distributed beyond the state line. The example that is given to me is that a research professor who has property and equipment that moves to another state. This would allow the department to dispose of that surplus property across state lines. Currently does not have that authority. That's essentially the bill. Again, a department bill. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you. I ask for your favorable consideration. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 848 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 848, the ayes are 167, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1216.
House Resolution 1216 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, recognizing Miss Betty Ann DePietro Rappe and rededicating a road on Georgia Ports Authority property in her honor. This resolution has been assigned to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted.
Chair recognizes Representative Gilliard to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of this distinguished body. I bring to you House Resolution 1216. It is a resolution requested from Georgia Port Authority on a great individual who'd worked for Georgia Port for over 53 years. This is a part of Georgia Port's property is a road asking to be dedicated in her honor. I yield the well, or I take any questions, Mr. Speaker.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Make an announcement. And then after I make the Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the adoption of House Resolution 1216, the ayes are 169, the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. If I could have your attention, please. After a number of discussions today, we have now reached an agreement with the Senate that I think takes care of many of the things that we've talked about today in terms of how we deal with where we are now in this state with regard to the coronavirus situation. So I want to kind of go through this one step at a time with you. We will be in session today as we normally would be on crossover day, which means it could be a late night, could not be a late night, but this will be we will finish our work here today. We will have session day 29 tomorrow, but, and I'm not even going to discourage people from coming to the gallery after some of the ways I was misinterpreted earlier in the week. But I'm going to encourage members to go home tonight or in the morning. The only thing that we will do tomorrow, and I only need one member here for that, is to do first readers of the Senate bills that they're passing today. We'll get those in committee. Then we will be suspended. We will be suspended, which means that this thing's going to end sometime soon. Don't y'all agree with me? Amen. And when it does, we're coming back, and we're going to be back ready to go on day 30. But we will not be starting over at the beginning of the session because we will be suspended and not adjourned until further notice. And that notice will come upon the call that will be issued jointly by the Lieutenant Governor and myself. So I'm going to again reiterate normal business tonight, but go home early in the morning and be with your family. And then we will get through quickly here with first readers tomorrow, and then that's what I'm going to do. House offices will be put on a telework basis beginning tomorrow till further notice. And that's all employees of the House will be teleworking until further notice issued by our office, and the Senate will do the same through the Lieutenant Governor's office. So that's kind of where we are. Our hope and prayer is that we are overreacting. But I'd rather do it this way than to underreact. And so that's why we're doing it this way. We will not be here for a few days, and hopefully it won't be long. The governor had a press conference that Chairman Cooper was at, and I think some others at 3 o'clock, and he's taken a little bit more of an aggressive position on this problem. He's going to allow local school systems to make their own determination about whether they go to school. We're not closing down state government, but we're going to be teleworking all across state government. And I join him in encouraging all of us, and all Georgians, in fact. We have a particular obligation, I think, during this time to take care of our grandparents and the older members of our family, because they are clearly the most vulnerable. We're going to be calm and get through our business, and then we will entertain a motion to suspend later in the evening, and we will suspend until we get the all clear, and we'll be back to do the people's business on day 30. So with that, we'll go back to work. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1037.
House Bill 1037 by Representative Dollar of the 45th to be entitled, an act to amend Code Section 48.7, 40.26 of the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to the Georgia Entertainment Industry Investment Act. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dollar to present the bill.
Thank you, Speaker. On a far less serious note, I bring HB 1037, which is the update to the film tax credit. This bill is, I think it can be viewed as largely this is a process improvement bill. It does a number of things. It's a fairly complicated measure. I'll try to get through it as we do have a large number of bills on the calendar. I'll go over the major points and try to explain those and then go through some of the individual things that the bill does. First and foremost, it calls for mandatory audits of all productions. It strengthens the process for how these audits are conducted and what qualified expenditures are and how they are submitted. It authorizes DOR to set up a third-party independent auditor list and establish a credentialing program for those that want to be on the list. Auditors seeking to be included must follow a list of procedures in order to qualify and in order to stay on the list. So DOR will also set up a process for removing auditors. It's worth noting that currently all productions that are audited, and that's and only a percentage choose, because right now it's mandatory, only a percentage choose to. The majority of dollars that go out are audited, but all of those audits are conducted out in California. One of the things that this bill does is it says that any auditor that wants to be included in this list, they must be licensed in Georgia. So when we passed this, the idea was this was supposed to grow jobs in Georgia, and I think that this is a natural expansion of that effort. Because of because of the sweeping change, there is a 3-year phase-in. This is to give DOR time to implement, and for the number of CPAs and firms that can do this for that industry to ramp up. That industry needs time to grow in this area, just as the rest of the sectors in this industry have. And it's also worth noting that that DOR will be reimbursed for all audits or portions of the audits conducted, and so that there will be no further exemption or no further expense to the taxpayer. This changes the process that GDEC and DOR award the credits, both the 20% and the 10% promotional uplift. Currently, GDEC certifies a project at 20 and the 10% at the same time, and this can be done up to 90 days before principal photography starts, all up until the end of the production. And then it certifies them and sends a letter to DR letting them know that it's a certified production. What this does is this changes that process to a 2-level certification process. A production is certified as a qualified production by GDEC. That doesn't change. What changes is that upon completion of the production, that production submits to DOR for an audit, and upon completion of the audit, the credits are issued then by DOR. And that's done in the form, that's when the 20% is issued. The 10% promotional uplift compliance is certified by GDEC, and then GDEC notifies DOR. The credits are then issued to the production, and that does not take place until that advertisement, that promotion has been realized, meaning that once the production is done and it's been distributed, then it gets certified for that 10% credit. This process helps to ensure compliance of all productions and expenditures and to remove possible clouds on credits, and this is to the benefit of both the taxpayers and the productions. This bill changes the carry forward of the credit. It moves it from 5 years to 3 years. There are really 2 main reasons for this. I'm happy to go into those if anybody has a question, but again, I'm trying to be respectful of the time. This bill removes the clawback provision that's in the current language, and that provision it only applies to productions that do not go through the voluntary audit. So since we're going from a voluntary audit system towards a mandatory audit system, I think it logically followed that we would remove that clawback language. Some additional changes are in the bill, we define what a presentation is. This industry has changed a lot since we did it first in '05, and then when we really passed, I guess the credit that has brought success to the state in '08. The industry's changed, technology's changed. The industry in Georgia has significantly changed, and this is one of the areas that needs some addressing. It defines a presentation and removes eligibility for the 10% uplift for them. Again, I can go into what a presentation is if there's a question. The bill moves sound recordings from a qualified production to a qualified expenditure. The way it's currently written in the film language, it makes it seem as though sound recordings are a standalone certifiable project, and it was kind of like shoehorned in there. This does not affect, I do want to point out, this does not affect the Georgia Music Investment Act, which is in different code. This bill, it addresses post-production and clarifies what qualified post-production expenditures are. And lastly, for larger audits, DOR and what will be the third-party auditors, they will perform what is called sampling, and there's different methods that they can be that audits can be sampled, and that's where they get a list of all the expenditures, and the auditor or DOR will request certain ones, and based on that audit, any expenditures that are found to be ineligible will then be projected across the population of the audit. And this is a very good deterrent for submitting what might be considered suspect expenditures. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill. I'm happy to take any questions.
You have a couple of questions if you yield.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the gentleman yield?
Happily.
Is it not true? I support this bill because of what the film industry has done for Georgia, and this is prudent legislation to improve our position, but what it's really done can't even be counted in dollars and cents because of the notoriety it has given us throughout the world. Is that not true?
I think the gentleman is spot on. There are definable numbers that we can look at to where this has been a success, but the exposure and the impact it's had on the lives of Georgians, I think, is it's immeasurable. Thank you for the question.
Do you further yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Williamson to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Contrary to an email many of us received early this morning, is it not true that Americans for Prosperity do support this measure, and this bill does not expand any of the current underlying programs under the Film Tax Credit Program?
Thank you for the question. That is true. This bill was vetted through the House Creative Arts and Entertainment Working Group. It was also then vetted through the House Ways and Means Committee and through rules, and that issue never was brought up. This has been a very well crafted and vetted bill, I believe. Thank you.
Do you further yield?
I will.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lynn Smith to your right for a question.
Is gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that your committee and under your leadership, several meetings and times have spent in trying to craft a bill that reflects our gratitude and our pride in the fact that we're one of the states for this whole film industry? Is that not true?
we wanted to get this right and not mess up the success that we've had. Georgia is the envy of the country in this, and in many ways in this global industry, we have in many ways set the bar globally. Yes, ma'am.
Gentlemen, further yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, is it not true that the emphasis was on good stewardship with the credits that we were giving out? And I thank you for that as well.
Thank you. I think it was universally agreed upon that we needed to be good stewards of the public money. Yes, ma'am.
Do you further yield?
I'll yield for one more, Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Martin to your right for a question.
Thank you. To your right. Chairman Dollar, you yield?
Yes.
I know you mentioned the auditors are going to be certified by DOR in Georgia. Previously, isn't it true that the Department of Revenue hired and paid for the auditors out in California? They worked for our Department of Revenue and reported to them. My question, and I know we had talked about it, I can't find it. The line numbers are a bit different than the last version of the bill I saw. Can you clarify for me to whom the auditors are responsible for while they're doing the audit, if in fact they're being paid for by the film company? And the question is this: is it not true that I'm concerned with the film company could hire them through an attorney, and some of the information in the audit could be protected by attorney privilege and work product, and our Department of Revenue might not be able to see it all? Do you feel comfortable that that is taken care of in the bill, with the revenue being able to propagate rules and regulations? Thank you for taking the question.
Yes, and I discussed that with DOR, and it's a very simple answer. If they want to go through an attorney and try to hide that from DOR, then DOR does not certify it, and they don't issue those credits, because DOR has a last word. They will have the last viewing of all audits. They will be able to audit every single audit. They will be doing all the above-the-line auditing, and if that scenario presents itself, then they won't certify the credits. Thank you, Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 1037 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Carson rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 133, I ask to be excused from this vote.
Gentleman has that right, and the journal will so reflect. What purpose does Representative Holland rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 133, I ask to be excused from this vote.
Lady has that right, and the journal will reflect that. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 1037, the ayes are 156, the nays are 10. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 881. Let me get her up there. Yes. No, go ahead, sit down. Take a load off.
House Bill 881 by Representative Cooper, the 43rd, and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 19 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to domestic relations so as to revise provisions relating to safe places for newborns. This bill had been referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, today I bring you the following substitute to House Bill 881. Over the past several years, we've passed 2 or 3 bills trying to provide a safe place for those that women who under great duress and I'm sure personal agony feel like they have to give up a newborn could do so safely. The first bill we passed, they had to give their names and their addresses when they came forth. Then we found that people didn't want to do that, often not wanting to give their names. And so we went back and revised the bill and said, okay, you don't have to give your name, but you have to come in person and give up that baby. Unfortunately, we still have mothers that don't want to do that. They don't want for anybody to know who they are. They want to give up that baby and totally without anyone knowing. And unfortunately, we've had 2 instances this year, one where they left a baby in the woods to die and one on the side of the road. So there was a group that came to me and they produce what they call hope boxes. And this is where if a hospital or a fire station where there's 24 hours a day, somebody is in that building and ready to, look after a newborn, qualified to do it, that they would put a sort of like a mini incubator where you could open it from the outside, put the baby in, it would lock, an alarm would go off, and it could be opened from the inside, and no one would know who put the baby in the hope box. Well, as we began to study this, I decided that it really needed very careful scrutiny about what those boxes were like. Exactly, what the specifications were, who could put them in, all of those ramifications. So this bill sets up a group to study that. It's made up of the Commissioners of Public Health, Human Services, the Director of the Division of Family and Children's Services, and the Department of Human Services, so that they can come back by December 30th this year and make a recommendation on all of the questions we ask in this bill to us, and that if we want to go forward in the next legislative session and approve that such boxes could be put in. They would be put in with private donations, nothing with state money. It would just be one more avenue to give mothers that feel like they have to abandon their child a safe place to put that child. And Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I will ask for this body's approval of the substitute to House Bill 8881, and I will yield the well.
You had no questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of House Bill 881, the ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 719.
House Bill 719 by Representative Silcox of the 52nd, to be entitled an act to amend Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to crimes and offenses so as to provide for the modernization of HIV-related laws to align with science to ensure that laws and policies support current understanding of best public health practices. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Recognizes Chairman Silcox to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring to you this afternoon House Bill 719. House Bill 719 modernizes our HIV-related laws to align them with current science. Specifically, House Bill 719 does three things. Number one, it redefines the term HIV test and a person living with HIV. Number two, it lowers the maximum penalty for someone living with HIV who knowingly engages in a sexual act with another without disclosing their medical condition from a felony punishable up to 10 years to only 5 years of imprisonment. And finally, it removes a hypodermic needle or syringe from several sections of the criminal code so that we can promote clean needle exchange in our harm reduction programs. It is my sincere hope that this bill will help reduce the number of new cases of HIV in Georgia, and then one day soon we can eliminate HIV in Georgia and in our country. With that, I will be glad to take any questions, Mr. Speaker.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you yield?
Yes.
Just a question around how this guidance has been formed. Is it true that the Department of Justice as well as the CDC have recommended criminal justice reform in this way?
The lady knows, I'm sure, of what she speaks. If there are any further questions, I'll be glad to yield. If not, I'll yield the well then. Appreciate your favorable consideration.
Lady has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Park to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of House Bill 719 and to encourage each member of this body to vote yes. I'd like to begin by thanking the author of the bill, Chairman Silcox and Chairman Cooper, for their hard work. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Republican and Democratic leaders who helped move this bill forward. And most importantly, I'd like to thank those living with HIV, advocates, and organizations who support this bill and are committed to doing all they can to end the HIV epidemic. Together, their courage and our fearless desire to do good will help move our state in the right direction to end an epidemic that has taken more than 700,000 American lives. As Chairman Silcox noted, HB 719 updates our laws to reflect best public health practices for preventing and treating HIV, which will help save tens of thousands of lives in Georgia. This is a nationwide effort. House Bill 719 follows recommendations from the CDC and the U.S. Department of Justice, as my colleague Park Cannon noted. It will also help us achieve the President's goal to end the HIV epidemic in the United States within 10 years. Thanks to advances in medicine, we can stop the transmission of HIV today. According to the CDC, preventative measures and safe practices can reduce the risk of transmission by 99.2%. Today, Georgians living with HIV are able to live full, meaningful lives. Recent studies show that with medication, a 20-year-old living with HIV in the United States has approximately the same life expectancy as a 20-year-old who is HIV negative. It is time to end the fear and stigma. Too many Georgians do not get tested because they are still scared. It is time we do our part to help our fellow Georgians get the testing, prevention, and treatment they need. As leaders in this state, we have an opportunity to come together and take a step toward ending an epidemic. As we face a new pandemic, it is my sincere hope that we will continue to stand united to protect the lives of Georgians. By working together, we will improve the health and safety of those we serve. So I urge each and every one of you to vote yes. Vote yes to help end an epidemic. Vote yes to help save lives. And vote yes because it's the right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, I will yield for any questions, and if there are none, I yield the well.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Morris to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
One of the finest young men that ever worked for me was infected with AIDS by someone that knew he had the disease. So my question is this: how is it by reducing penalties that we're actually going to reduce the spread of this disease? Because this young man, incredible young man, if you ever met him, just one of the finest people I've ever known. His life was changed forever because someone intentionally infected him with this disease.
So the bill does nothing to change current law, which makes it a felony to intentionally transmit HIV to cause harm. That said, these criminalization laws do make it harder for people to get tested, which scares people from preventative measures that could help end the epidemic once and for all. Moreover, if I may, those who are currently living with HIV, who are on medication, can no longer, or if they are virally suppressed, cannot transmit HIV. And so this is an epidemic in which we have the capacity to bring to an end by encouraging people to get tested and by encouraging people to stay on their medications.
Does the gentleman further yield?
I'm sorry?
Does the gentleman further yield?
I'll yield for one more question.
So if we look at line item 38, beginning at 38, it indicates that this is we're still talking about intentional spread here on this. Is that correct? And it looks like we're reducing the penalties for that intentional infection.
This bill keeps the penalty for an intentional spread as a felony. I will yield the will. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 719 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 719. The ayes are 124, the nays are 40. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1098.
House Bill 1098 by Representative Carpenter IV to be entitled an act to amend Title 32 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to highways, bridges, and ferries so as to provide for development of a statewide strategic transportation plan. This bill having referred to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Carpenter to present the bill.
Thank you, Speaker. This is a real simple bill. It's brought to you for the department. It basically is about efficient government. It streamlines and synchronizes the statewide plan with the federal plan. Instead of doing two plans, we'll just do one and they'll match up. I appreciate your favorable consideration, and this is not about short-term rentals. and I yield the well.
You have no questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 1098. The ayes are 167, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1057.
House Bill 1057 by Representative Rhodes, the 120th, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 12 of Title 2 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to soil amendments, so as to authorize further regulation of soil amendments. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment, and then transferred to Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Industrial byproduct waste that is being spread as soil amendments and fertilizer. We've got to have a place to put this stuff. But what we need to do is protect our neighbors. If you have not had the privilege of smelling this concoction, you can come down and visit myself and Tom McCall, a few of the others. Basically, all this bill does is it says that you can't put domestic septage in this concoction. And if you do, there are stiff penalties that will meet you along the way. The other thing it does is they are going to start paying tonnage fees for the commissioner to hire an agronomist so we can have someone to monitor these situations. And none of the companies have complained about that one bit. The last part of the bill gives our locals at home a little bit of ammunition to protect the neighbors. Basically, they can go in and with an ordinance or setback or buffers, and they can kind of say that you can't just put this right on top of a church or school, a neighbor, or whatnot. So, Mr. Speaker, that's the bill, and I'll answer any questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I'm scared.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Just so I can make sure that I understand, can you define domestic septage for us?
It is cesspools and a whole lot of other things that do not smell very good.
And does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
And so this domestic septage is being put into like fertilizers? Can you just kind of explain?
Yes, ma'am, it has been done, and we're trying to stop that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. the committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 1057. The ayes are 164. The nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1073.
House Bill 1073 by Representative Watson in the 172nd, being entitled an act to amend Chapter 62, Title 36, the official code of Georgia, annotated relating the developmental authorities so as to provide for the creation of regional developmental authorities. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Sam Watson to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I bring before you today HB 1079. This is creating regional development authorities. This is an initiative and created out of the Rural Development Council, and it was actually an idea that was actually started by Chairman Jay Powell to bring counties together in 3 to 5 in number, allow for the lowest tier, and allow for some One Georgia grant money for medical facilities within that park. And it's a good piece of legislation to try to grow jobs in rural Georgia. And be glad to take any questions.
You have some questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Meeks to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to double check. Does it impact any current regional commissions that have already been set up with multi-counties?
It does not impact any joint authorities that are already in action or in motion or doing their thing. This will be an addition. We're just wanting to put a structure in place. Currently, a lot of counties can do the joint, and we have joints around, and some of them have profit share and some of them don't. This will kind of put a structure in place to allow for the revenue sharing, to allow for the lowest tier, and just put something in place to get them to join together.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Speaker, if there are no other questions, I'll yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Representative Stovall rise?
Parliamentary.
State your inquiry.
Was it not true that I was going to ask the gentleman, was this similar to the Atlanta Regional Commission on how it's established?
He might do a delivery back there and answer your question.
Thank you.
All those in favor are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 1073, the ayes are 155, the nays are 11. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1122.
House Bill 1122 by Representative Watson, the 172nd, to be titled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 8 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to regional commissions so as to revise provisions regarding the appointment of non-public members. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Watson to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do bring before you today HB 1122, and this may clear some of that last question. This is dealing with regional commissions. The previous bill was dealing with the creating regional economic development parks. This is rearranging the current makeup of the regional commissions. Everyone has one of those in their part of the state. They have very large boards, some as high as 60. And so what we're trying to do is maybe get the boards to a smaller number where there's a lot more interaction among those councils so that they can do better work. They're already doing a lot of great things. So what we're doing is we're just doing away with some appointments that either don't ever get appointed or they're really late. And so we're reducing through that number, and then we're also creating an executive council that is elected by the bit larger council to help do the day-to-day, the budget, the detailed work of the regional commissions. And this is also another initiative of the Rural Development Council. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate it.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 1122. The ayes are 168, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1045.
House Bill 1045 by Representative Hogan of the 179 to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 38.8.3 the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the funding of services or the reduction of ad valorem taxes. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
I have not asked this question this session, but I have a feeling on this one that maybe it involves the creation of a city. Nope. You're sure? Now, Representative Kelly and Representative Williams say they've read the bill and they're concerned too. Chair recognizes Chairman Hogan to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I bring before you today House Bill 1045. This is a tax revenue from insurance premiums has restricted the use in unincorporated areas. These uses at this time are for fire, police protection, garbage protection, and streets. House Bill 1045 would simply add flood risk reduction to this list that the counties could be using these taxes for. It also allows them to use 25% of this tax money to apply for grants with FEMA, which would In short, a larger 25% match means larger grant awards to Georgia communities, and basically that's what the bill does. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Well, you have a question. Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it not true that this bill will not only greatly help the people in coastal Georgia, certainly the people in the St. Simon Island area, but also the people in the much prettier area north in Liberty County?
And for your information, I did get flooded very badly with Irma on St. Simons, but this applies to all counties in the state, and it gives flexibility to the county commissioners to use this money for flood reduction in the communities across the state.
No further questions.
Thank you, and I will yield well and ask for your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 1045, the ayes are 168, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair wants to recognize on the floor of the House a former member of this body, former State Representative Tom Taylor. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1032.
House Bill 1032 by Representative Hatch to the 150th to be entitled An Act to Amend Code Section 3173, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to requirements for permits to operate certain healthcare related institutions. This bill having been referred to the Special Committee on Quality Healthcare, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, this bill does three things. Two of them will help increase access to mental health hospital beds in rural Georgia, counties less than 50,000. To be a little more specific, the first section will allow and incentivize joint ventures between these rural hospitals and institutes for mental disease, which are private hospitals that provide mental health services. Section 1A will allow a hospital in rural Georgia to swap over acute care beds to mental health beds by going through the CON process, so making sure they have meet all the regulatory requirements, but it gives them one step up, that they do not have to prove the need for mental health in their area, because we all know that there's a true need for more access to mental health beds for people, low-cost, low-income individuals. Section 2 corrects a problem that's taking place now because of a guideline change, a national guideline change. We allow some ambulatory surgery centers to exist without operating rooms. They have to apply. They do not have to go through the full CON process because they don't qualify as a facility that actually does procedures in a sterile environment. That's what this bill does, and Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I will take them. If not, I'll yield the will.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Gardner to your left for a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for this bill. Line 45, the question I have is, does it in fact change the certificate of need law significantly? And does that change only apply to rural hospitals?
The change only applies to rural hospitals, and if you look at line 51, it'll say that the only thing that doesn't have to be considered in the CON process is subsection A of paragraph 2, which only addresses having to prove that there's a need for the mental health service.
So am I correct that some of the psychiatric hospitals, even in the Atlanta area, will then be able to partner with rural hospitals to provide psychiatric beds?
Yes.
Thank you.
You have another question if you care to yield.
I will yield for one more.
Chair recognizes Chairman Beverly to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
In Section 2 of the bill, it says that ambulatory surgical centers do not require a certificate of need, even if it does not have an operating room. Is that correct? So an ambulatory surgery center will not need a certificate of need. Is that
No,
correct?
they would still need a certificate of need. These particular institutions that already exist in our state, there's about 50 of them, because of guidelines within the CON process, architectural guidelines is the holdup. They already exist and they've been through the process, and it's real technical, but I mean, they still have to go through the process to make sure they meet the regulations and have all the expertise they need, but they don't have to have an operating room. And this says that they don't, because in the past they have not had to have an operating room, but this will make sure that they don't, and these 50 that are here can still exist.
You have one more question if you care to yield.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
You better take a friendly question from her. Chair recognizes Chairman Houston for a question.
Is it not true that in rural areas we have many hospitals with empty hospital beds, but maybe the person that lives in that area doesn't really need mental health, but we have overcrowdedness in other areas that need mental health, and they could use this bed? And that's when you talk about proving where their need is. The CON says they have to need it in that area. But we have a shortage of mental health beds all over the state.
Madam Chair, thank you for that question.
Thank
I couldn't agree with it more.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 1032, the ayes are 124, the nays are 41. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1020.
House Bill 1020 by Representative Gravely, the 67th, being entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to driver's licenses so as to provide for license suspension for conviction of drug-related offenses. This bill then referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Vice Chairman Gravely to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I bring to you today House Bill 1020 for your favorable consideration. Friends, this measure simply requires the completion of a risk reduction program before obtaining a limited driving permit after a DUI arrest. Statistically, we know that with a first-time DUI arrest, it is more than a high probability not the first time the driver has committed the crime of drinking and driving. Data also shows us that it could likely be upwards of the 50th time the driver has driven while under the influence of drugs and alcohol. According to SafeRoads.org, 29% of all vehicle crashes involve an alcohol-impaired driver. The risk reduction program provides three things, and as we talk about mental health courts, drug courts, and how we're trying to help recidivism, reduce it, let me tell you, a risk reduction program does three things. It provides an assessment of family circumstances dealing with prior substance use and abuse. It also addresses addiction and possible mental illness indicators to help with intervention solutions the program participant may seek if further treatment is needed, and most importantly, a risk reduction program is a proven method in reducing recidivism. Risk reduction programs are required for the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and are required for the Coast Guard for any alcohol or drug policy violation. 18 other states utilize these programs as well. But I also want to let you know this, the success of our drug courts have been recognized nationwide. However, depending on the jurisdiction you live in, you may not be eligible as a participant in drug court until after your third DUI. A risk reduction program simply does this. When we evaluate and change our personal risk perception, we start changing our behavior. And changing our behavior could likely prevent the individual from having to end up in DUI drug court. Mr. Speaker, I'll end with this. John Adams said this: facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can get these folks in an education program to help them understand why they're making high-risk decisions, hopefully we can reduce recidivism, keep our roads safer, and help these folks that are struggling with possible addiction. Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well for any questions.
I think John Adams nailed it down for you. You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 1020.
I'm not sure he ever drove while he was impaired, but
he had a wagon or two, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 1020 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Representative Momtahan rise?
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Rule number 133, I would like to be excused from this vote.
Gentleman has that right, and the journal will forever reflect the fact that he did not vote on this bill. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 1020, the ayes are 153, the nays are 9. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1014.
House Bill 1014 by Representative Tankersley, the 160th, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 42 and Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to downtown development authorities. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tankersley to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a Department of Community Affairs bill, and it only involves downtown development authorities. In Georgia, we do have 231 development authorities, and while DDAs can go inactive, they cannot be dissolved. Of the 1,300 plus authorities that we do have in the state, these are the only authorities that require perpetual existence. The Department of Community Affairs has had many requests to provide a way that they can be dissolved. So this bill will do exactly that. It's going to allow municipal governments to dissolve downtown authorities, development authorities that are no longer active, they don't hold any assets, and they have no outstanding debt or other obligations. By simply striking the sentence that you'll see on the bill, each authority shall have perpetual existence, will allow the bill to those inactive authorities, it will allow them to dissolve, to be legally dissolved, and that's important. If there are no questions, Mr. Speaker, I would
You have one question.
Okay.
Do you yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Stovall to your left for a question.
Does the woman yield?
I do.
The question I have is, what happens if they do have outstanding debt and they're wanting to dissolve?
They cannot dissolve until they have no debt.
Okay, so if does the general ladies further yield?
I
have
do.
Another question. Okay, so if they have removed had the members end up resigning from the position on the development authority, and they had debt that was still left on the books, how is that handled?
I would have to defer to the Department of Community Affairs, but I would again just state that they cannot dissolve until those issues are settled.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, Mr. Speaker, I would like
Questions?
to yield the
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would
Is there
ask-
any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 1014, the ayes are 164, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 998.
House Bill 998 by Representative Rhodes, the 120th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 27 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to game and fish so as to change the effective dates of rules and regulations promulgated by the Board of Natural Resources. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Game, Fish, and Parks. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sub to House Bill 998, this bill is real simple. It does a few things. It updates our rules and regs. It updates our implied consent on hunting under the influence and boating under the influence. And it completes our DMAP program by allowing our commissioner to go in and increase or decrease bag limits as he sees fit. But the main part of this bill is a promise that was made last year on Day 40 to Representative Debbie Buckner, and we're going to make the shoal bass the state riverine sport fish for the state of Georgia. So, Mr. Speaker, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
I don't, well, you
I'll
do have a question. You have a question. It's up to you.
I'll yield.
You yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative LaRicchia to your right for a
I should have
question.
yielded well.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
You
To
know,
my friend.
Is it not true that we have heard the expression, the little man, in here a number of times this session?
We have.
And that I have received a number of calls with one of our hunting and fishing federations about looking after the little man, the little hunter, and that we are going to continue to work on that as we move forward.
Yes, sir, we will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well, and I ask to vote green for the shoal bass.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 998 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 998. The ayes are 163, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Representative Cannon for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The hearing on the Crown Act and the House Resolution 345 is canceled. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Beverly for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Georgia House Democratic Caucus will have dinner in room 506 CLOB, 506 CLOB, and then we'll go to 514. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair wants to announce that members, that we have boxed dinners for members and staff in room 230 with seating in room 216 during the dinner break. But first, the chair recognizes the chair of the House Rules Committee for an announcement.
Thank you, Speaker. Somebody left a real nice looking pen up here. Right. I'll keep it. Rules Committee will meet promptly at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
House will be in recess for dinner until 7:15 p.m.